What's up, guys? Just wanted to do a video here about a question that has come up a lot in the past, and it's about picking the right rod for the situation you're faced with. It's a big problem. So rods come with all different lengths, powers, actions. So I want to break it down a little bit and try to explain what type of rod you need to use for the unique situation you find yourself in. So first thing you have to figure out is what type of lure you're going to use, and that comes down to the weight of the lure and the bulk of the lure, because some lures are more compact, they do not have as much drag in the water. And by saying that, just because a lure weighs 3/4 of an ounce doesn't necessarily mean that all 3/4 ounce lures have the same drag when you try to set the hook. And that's really what we're talking about, is how much force is needed to penetrate that fish's mouth so that you can get a good hook set. So the other thing that you need to think about when you're using or trying to choose a rod is how far away your target is. If you're pitching a bait 10 feet away from the boat, and there's not going to be a whole lot of stretch in your line, and there's not going to be too much of a delay in the hook setting force that you elicit from your hook set. So how far away is the target? How deep is the water? That's the other key. Again, hand in hand. So if you're fishing for fish in 18 inches of water or 18 feet of water, the amount of time required to set the hook between your hook set and when that lure actually moves is usually dependent on the distance away from your rod. So the other thing that you have to think about as well is the amount, or not the amount, but the material of line that you're using, right? So we have monofilament, we have fluorocarbon, we have braided line, okay? So braided line is almost instantaneous. There's next to no stretch in most of them. So as soon as you move that rod, that bait is moving on the other end of your line. Fluorocarbon is an intermediate line. It has much less stretch than monofilament. There are pros and cons to all three, but you need to think about it. You need to think about how far away it is, how bulky is the lure, how much force is required to set that hook. And then the other thing is the amount of cover. Because if you're fishing in relatively open water, there's going to be less resistance than if you're fishing in heavy cover. So your line has to overcome those obstacles in order to set that hook. So that's what you have to be cognizant of when you are picking a rod. So when a rod is weighted up to 1.25 ounces, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be effective at fishing a lure that's 1.25 ounces, because of all those variables that come into play. Again, bulk. Very compact jig, full-size jig. This is 3/4 of an ounce. This is 3/4 of an ounce. However, this requires more force to move than this jig does. So, when you're thinking about that, make sure that you choose your line and rod appropriately for the size and mass of the lure that you're trying to fish.